The Tar Heels are a top 5 team in January or later for the first time since the 2018-19 season. And you know what? I believe they're here to stay.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to welcome you in to get your Tar Heels content every day. For you everydayers in particular, want to say big hello to you. And if you're new to the show, or maybe you're a repeat guest, we're so glad that you're here. If you want to be a bigger part of our community, come join the Locked On Tar Heels Discord channel. We're hanging out talking great Carolina content all the time. The link for that is in the show notes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Coming up on the show today, we're going to look at the newest polls that are out, some bracketology that's out, an update on Carolina basketball recruiting. It's been a minute, so I want to catch us up on that. And we had the introductory press conference for new defensive coordinator Geoff Collins on Monday. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But also it is Tuesday. And so I got Tuesday trivia for you. You ready for this? Here we go. UNC has played 16 games this season, which is just over half of the regular season. There's 31 games in college basketball regular season. AJ Davis in those 16 games has made 48 three-pointers. Some very rough, loosey-goosey math doubles that to 96 threes. Now, obviously, RJ should have some postseason games as well, but, we're going to set it at 96 for right now. So my question is, how many Tar Heels have hit 96 or more threes in a single season in Carolina history? So I want you to give me how many, who are they, and how many three-pointers did those people hit? All right, the answer for that coming up at the end of the show, as always. Let's get into where things stand heading into this week of college basketball. Obviously, the new AP rankings dropped on Monday, and North Carolina is the number 4 team in the nation. Let me run down the entire top 10 just in case you didn't see it. P.S. While we do that, I'm also going to put up for you so you can see it our most recent Locked On top 25 for those who are watching. Here is the AP top 25, though. Top 10, at least, I should say. Let's count it down from 10. Number 10, Memphis. 9, Baylor. 8, Kentucky. 7, Duke. 6, Tennessee. 5, Houston. 4, North Carolina. 3, Kansas. 2, Purdue. And number 1, UConn. And here's where things sit with that. This is where we expected Carolina to move their way into the top 5, and that's exactly what they did. Now, the question was, where are they going to be? Lots of people were speculating all weekend. We had a lot of great conversation in the Discord going on about that, but Carolina ends up 4th. That's actually where I personally ranked the Tar Heels. The only difference I had in that top 4 from the AP poll is I put Purdue still at number 1 ahead of UConn, because when I look at the resumes of all these teams, I thought Purdue's resume is actually still better than UConn's resume when you compare the two, followed by Kansas. And then I liked Carolina's right behind those 3. So that's why I landed them where I did. Now, what's interesting as you look at the current top 4, I just want to sit there for a second. So the AP poll, the voters vote. There's 63 of them right now that are voting, and they vote all the way down to 25. And then you get a certain number of points for each slot, and they tally up all the points and all the first place votes. And then you just slot everybody in. Well, the top 4 is really interesting. So it's UConn and Purdue, number 1 and number 2. I would have had it flipped, but this tier of UConn and Purdue, hear this. UConn got 39 first place votes. Purdue got 20 first place votes. So of the 63 first place votes, those 2 teams got 59 of them. And when you look at all the points that were tallied, UConn got 1,542. Purdue got 1,506. So pretty close there together. What is that, like a 36-point differential? But then from Purdue, down to Kansas at third. Kansas got 3 first place votes, and the Tar Heels got a first place vote. Shout out to that poll voter. I didn't actually go look up who it is. But what's interesting, Kansas tallied 1,426 total points, so like 80 behind Purdue. And then Carolina was 1,407, so like 19 behind Kansas. And then from Carolina down to Houston at 5 is a massive drop-off, like essentially like 170 or something like that. So there's this, what you see in the AP poll is this clear delineation of a first tier of UConn and Purdue right now. This is where we stand as of mid-January. A clearly delineated second tier, which is North Carolina and Kansas, separated, a little bit lower than those top two, but then a big gap from North Carolina down to Houston at number 5. So what we're seeing then, what that says to me is there's a first tier, little separator, second tier, but then a big separator down to that third tier. Now, obviously, this is where things stand today, and it's going to change and evolve as we go throughout the conference portion of the season because teams are losing on the road all the time. But for right now, as we're looking at things today, Carolina is in a great spot. I feel very comfortable with where the Tar Heels are at. Thinking then to the bracketology side of it, because that's why this ultimately matters, is where is Carolina sitting as compared to the rest of the country? Well, ESPN, Joe Lunardi, will have a new bracketology out today, Tuesday. And frankly, when that comes out, based on where Lunardi had Carolina and where he was talking about Carolina last week, I expect the Tar Heels to be a number 1 seed in his new bracketology. His last iteration of it, the 1 seeds were Purdue, Houston, UConn, and Arizona. Since then, Houston and Arizona have both lost again. And so I expect them to drop out, Purdue and UConn, and probably Kansas and Carolina to be the other 2 number 1 seeds in some order, whether Carolina is the 3 or 4 overall. That's where I believe it will be at today, Tuesday. And so, in fact, by the time you're listening to or watching today's episode, it might already be out and you already know the result of that. Now, others, there's a website you can go check out that's called Bracket Matrix, where they compile like however many different bracketologists versions of their bracket, and then they update it with the most recent ones, show you, where your team sits on average amongst all those brackets. And so it's really kind of interesting. But another just one that's well known is Jerry Palm from CBS. He actually put out a new one already on Monday, and Carolina in that poll, or in that bracket, was still a 2 seed behind Purdue, Kansas, UConn, and Houston. So the difference in that one was Arizona already, he had moved back, but kept Houston in that 1 seed conversation ahead of North Carolina as a 2 seed. Now, again, we're in mid-January and things are going to change and evolve all the time. And that's just is what it is. But again, with where Carolina is at right now in the AP poll, with where Carolina is at in our Locked On poll, for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see that. And with where Carolina is sitting in bracketology, as I looked at that bracket matrix site, I went ahead and checked it out. The vast majority of the brackets on there have Carolina at either a 1 or a 2. I feel like I saw 1 or 2 where the Tar Heels were a 3, but I'm in great shape for where you want to be. So where do we move forward? Well, we talked about that a little bit on yesterday's show, that Wednesday you've got Louisville. You expect to beat them. You don't want to overlook it, right? You want to, as I said, you want to just keep bringing that elite energy game in and game out. And that's what I expected the Tar Heels to do tomorrow night at home. And then you go on the road to Boston College this weekend. And so there was a couple of questions from the live reaction show that we answered yesterday. And one of them I said I wanted to save for today, as we were talking about kind of looking ahead a little bit. And that was from Graham Bunn. And Graham asked this question: what is the next big test for the team schedule-wise, in my opinion? And I'll give 2 things, and it's actually back-to-back games. The first of which is just under a week from now. That is this coming Monday at home against Wake Forest. Now, thankfully, this game is at home. The Tar Heels don't have to play Wake on the road. But for 2 reasons, I think this is the next big, with all due respect to Louisville and Boston College, test, as Graham was asking. So I'm just trying to answer in the spirit, a coach would say that Louisville tomorrow night, that is the next big test. I'm trying to answer in the spirit of which Graham and asked this question. So for me, it is this next Monday, January 22nd at home against Wake Forest. And I said it's for two reasons. Number one, Carolina plays at Boston College on Saturday up in Boston and then has to return home to play Wake Forest. Wake Forest will have played at home on Saturday. And not only that, but they're playing Louisville. And so Wake should be coming off when you expect Carolina to as well, but a tougher game in a road environment before coming back and turning around pretty quickly and playing again on Monday night. So, so that's one reason is the travel schedule. The other is Wake Forest is a really good basketball team this year. Hunter Salas is just the next in this long iteration from Alondas Williams to Tyree Appleby to now Hunter Salas that Coach Forbes has brought in the transfer market to lead the attack for him. They've got several other key pieces, names you would know. And so I think that's going to be a tough test. And then the other is the very next game after that following Saturday. So Carolina's got just shy of a week before their next game, but Carolina will have the week Saturday earlier gone up to Boston College. And then this Saturday, they will go south, almost the second southernmost ACC team to play at Florida State on Saturday, January 27th. So these back-to-back games, I think, are going to be big, big tests. And I know FSU doesn't rate as high right now, but they're tied for second in the ACC with the three other North Carolina schools right now. And so they're doing something. That one loss, obviously, is to the Tar Heels. Speaking of which, that means Florida State is going to be on the lookout for some revenge. I mean, they probably feel like they probably should have won that game in Chapel Hill. Great return, great comeback from the Tar Heels to get that win. But Florida State is going to be ready to go for that one. So Graham, that's my answer. Next Monday at home against Wake, and then a week from Saturday on the road at Florida State. All right, coming up, we got to talk some Carolina basketball recruiting and why I think Carolina is going to be in good shape in the 2025 class. We'll get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by Jace Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but can we talk for a minute about preparing for when those moments happen? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if someone I loved got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from getting the life-saving medications they needed. Thankfully, there's Jace Medical, who makes the Jace case, a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, skin infections, and others. This could happen to any of us. So visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the cost. It's never been more important than to be prepared than today. So go to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Let's talk some basketball recruiting. And first, before we get into some individuals, let me remind us all of the state of where I think we're at with high school recruiting. Because of the transfer portal, and especially because of where things are at least right now, where the legislation is that 2-time transfers are good to go, high school recruiting continues to be more devalued than ever before. That said, to me, Carolina should only be having conversations, at least in the high school realms, with the most elite of the high school players. Because anybody else, they're just going to sit on the end of the bench and ultimately transfer. So what I think for those, not elite level high school players, you talk to them, you develop a rapport so that if they rise in their capability and skill set, and then ultimately at some point enter the transfer portal, they are a possibility to come play for the Tar Heels. Other than that, you only want to go after the top level people. And that's what we see Coach Davis doing right now. So I want to talk to you about 3 of them in particular, starting, and these are all class of 2025 guys. So guys that right now are juniors in high school. First off is AJ Dybantsa, who was actually in the class of 26, but reclassed up back in October, the same month, by the way, in which Carolina offered him a scholarship. And when he reclassed, he jumped straight to the head of the line, jumping even Cam Boozer on the way. And so AJ Dybantsa, if you didn't get to see him or hear about him this summer, he was the stud at Peach Jam, the one that everyone wanted to know about. He's a 6'9" small forward. So one of those positions like the 3, that is just, if you can get an absolute dude, they're so unique. They're like, think about if you play fantasy basketball, filling out your small forward position is always the hardest. They're just the most difficult to find. And so AJ Dybantsa being that at the top of the class, oh buddy, whoever is able to get him, and hopefully he stays in college, is going to be in great shape. He is an absolute dude, and he, in my opinion, is it. He does everything. As a freshman last year, he averaged 19.1 points, 9.6 rebounds, 2.9 assists, and 2.5 blocks. I'm telling you, it's all there. He's originally from Massachusetts, but plays on the other coast at Prolific Prep in Napa, out in California. And here's the deal with AJ Dybantsa, and obviously we're still early in this thing, but from rumors I'm hearing, things people are dropping in my ears, Carolina has, at least right now, a legit shot with this young man, along with UConn. There's obviously others in the game, but those are just 2 of the schools I'm hearing at the top of the list right now. Let's talk about Koa Peat, who plays in Arizona. Hubert Davis was in Chapel Hill Saturday earlier in the day for dismantling Syracuse. Later on Saturday, he was up in Massachusetts for Hoop Hall. And one of the ones he watched while he was there was Koa Peat. We've talked about him on the show before, but another guy who's top 6 ranked at all 4 of the recruiting sites. After Coach Davis being at the game to watch Pete this weekend, Koa was quoted as saying, "That was really cool. Coach Davis is a great guy, great program over there. And I had a good time on my visit there to see him at my games, and to see him at my games means a lot." And you might have seen, maybe you hadn't, that Koa Peat actually recently released his top 10 list. And in addition to North Carolina, it was, I'll read it alphabetically: Arizona, Arizona State, Baylor, Duke, Houston, Kentucky, Michigan, Texas, UCLA. So just a host of some of the best programs in the nation. By the way, Baylor just beat out Duke and Kentucky for a young man. Way to go, Scott Drew. Congrats on that one. Koa Peat also was quoted as saying, quote, "The deciding factor will come down to whom I trust the most." So that's going to be a critical factor. If that's part of what you're looking for, I don't know how you can do much better than Hubert Davis. And one other thing I want to say that he mentioned about Coach Davis's pitch to him was, quote, "They stressed the history of North Carolina. They would use me as a versatile wing, kind of like Harrison Ingram, and just how they liked each other, how the team got along with each other was my biggest takeaway." So this, as a young man who can do a little bit of everything, just like Harrison Ingram can, that's a very good sign that he sees himself in Harrison Ingram being able to do that for the Tar Heels. He sees how Coach Davis uses him, but also critically, this is a team that the big selling point has been how well they get along together, how much camaraderie there is, how they love going out to eat together, how they love doing all those things. You see him noticing that, and that mattering in a big way. I'm telling you, this is what Coach Davis is creating with the Tar Heels. And recruits are noticing. The third young man I want to note is Caleb Wilson. And we're catching up on this one a little bit, but you might recall back in the fall, Caleb Wilson was scheduled to come to Carolina, ultimately postponed and said he would reschedule. Like people came out of the woodworks, all freaked out. To Isaac, is Caleb Wilson, he's done. He's going somewhere else. He's just saying this and he's not going to reschedule. Well, hey, easy does it. I cautioned not to try to make smoke where there wasn't any, and thankfully that proved to be true. Now, Caleb Wilson has indeed scheduled an official visit for February 3rd. Do you know what's happening that day? The Tar Heels are hosting Duke. Now, here's what that means. Already you have to win that basketball game. But when you're bringing in dudes, you got to go win this game, and you got to put your stamp on it, show that you are the superior school. Wilson, 6'9", power forward, plays at Holy Innocents Episcopal in the Atlanta area, and he's at least 5th in all 4 services. So these 3 young men we're talking about that Carolina has a good, is at least in on, are all top 6 in the class of 25. That's that elite level I'm looking at. Now, as many elite players as Coach Davis has offered in this class, and I'll remind you of all of them here in just a second, I just want to remind us all that Carolina will not land even close to a majority or even half of all of them. And frankly, they shouldn't, because you need to sprinkle a couple freshmen with some transfers and returning experience and all that kind of stuff. So what that means is that we as the Carolina family should be thrilled to get 2, maybe even 3 of these young men on the class of 2025. So to be in like this with these 3 guys is great news. And at this point, as we talk in mid-January, I legitimately believe that the Tar Heels have at least a shot with all 3 of those that we mentioned. And it's important because on-court lack of success isn't the worst thing in the world. Like, when I say why, I mean, why does Carolina have a shot with all of them? I mean, aside from just liking Carolina, the history of it, the Jordan of it, while on-court lack of success doesn't kill you, man, having the level of success the Tar Heels are getting right now, coming together as a team, doing the things they're doing, and that helping prove that Hubert Davis is the man for the job that, a lot of us were preaching patience on, but some people were not. It's all right there. It's perfect. It's what you need. So Carolina doing great stuff in that regard and just cruising along as you would want them to be. I said I'd read off the rest of the 2025 offers that are out there. It's Jasper Johnson, Cam Boozer, Caden Boozer, Koa Peat, who we've already talked about, Bryson Tiller, Isaiah Harwell, and the other is Darren Peterson. So those are all names to be keeping your eyes out on as Carolina moves forward in the class of 2025. Obviously, we'll celebrate any news that turns out good for Carolina, and we'll talk about when it doesn't go as well, what that will mean moving forward. Well, we had the introductory press conference for new defensive coordinator Geoff Collins on Monday, and he used a line that struck me, and I love it, and I'm excited to share it with you. And we'll do that in just a second, right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs kicked off just this past weekend, but there's still time to get in on all the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Their app is really easy to use, and they've got all sorts of various ways you can bet. Things like same-game parlays. There's a brand new Explore tab that helps you find the things you're looking for. They've got all sorts of college basketball lines. One of them is Final Four odds. Right now, Purdue is plus 170, Arizona plus 230, UConn and Houston tied at plus 250, and Carolina and Auburn tied at plus 390. So if you want to get in on that action, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon right now and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. On Monday, North Carolina held a football press conference, started off by Coach Mack Brown talking about various things, including a new NIL initiative that is starting from Heels for Life. I'll talk about that in just a second. But the main piece that we're all interested in and care about is the new defensive coordinator hire, and that's Geoff Collins. Coach Brown said they had looked at about 5 different guys, but just every time they talked, Geoff Collins' name just kept rising up to the surface. Previously, he's been the defensive coordinator at Mississippi State and Florida, very successful there, and then head coach at Temple, and where most Tar Heel fans probably remember him from as the head coach at Georgia Tech. Coach Collins has not been coaching this year. By everything we've heard, he's just been sitting down in his man cave, as Coach Brown said, watching football and staying up on the game and schemes and everything that's going on. Coach Brown talked about how much he liked Coach Collins' aggressive style. He likes that he attacks. Those 2 things are very telling. Anytime in a talent-based or scheme-based kind of, forward-facing something, anytime things don't go well and you have a certain thing in place, always watch to see what are the key words that come up. Those are the things that the pendulum is looking to swing with the coaching staff. And so in this case, it is this aggressive style. It is this attacking style that Coach Brown was looking for. Coach Brown said, "I've coached against him. I know how difficult his defense is to play against." as an offensive unit, right? And so I don't know what higher praise you can have is like, hey, I coached against him and I didn't like doing it. And so I want him on my team. Hey, I can get behind that. Coach Brown has talked about, and you might have read or seen this, but on their Zoom calls, Coach Collins broke down Carolina's tape, already talking about what was good, what needed to be fixed. Coach Brown said that he already knew all the coaches' names, knew the players' names and numbers, was giving equal praise and criticism, but all of it very fair, none of it just like, this dude's terrible, none of that, but very precise and specific coaching. And he's not even the coach. He's not even got the job yet. Like, that is phenomenal. And so what I loved is that Coach Collins came up and he basically said, hey, look, when a Hall of Famer calls, you leave your man cave and you get to work. But the phrase that he used, and this is the one I wanted to share that really stuck out to me, is he said, my goal is that we're going to be creating chaos without being chaotic. And here's why I think that is such a good line and so critically important in this day and age of college football. Defenses are at such a disadvantage because of rules and because of all the wild schemes that offenses are running. And so a lot of times, all you can do as a defense is just try to confuse the offense, disguise your blitzes, disguise what kind of, whether you're in man or zone or whatever it is, to do all of these things. And so if we can know what we're doing, that's the without being chaotic part. Because let's remember last year, all the times we talked about how Carolina didn't know the play call and wasn't getting it in quickly enough and all those kind of things. So we're not going to be chaotic, but we're going to create chaos for the other team. And if Carolina can do that, I think that is phenomenal. And so I love this quote from Coach Collins is going to stick with me this offseason. The other thing, obviously, is that Ted Monachino moved seats on the bus from senior defensive analyst to now being the defensive line coach. And as Coach Brown said, if you would have told me that I would have these two guys, helping lead my defense in various ways, I would feel great, and you would have thought I was a liar. So I think Carolina is in great shape. He also talked about the Heels for Life, the football collective's new initiative that's kicking off the Hold the Line campaign. Basically, what they're trying to do in the short term is raise $1 million over 2 weeks. And then over the long term, raise $5 million or more in calendar year 2024, while also gaining a total membership of 5,000 for Heels for Life. So that would be a great thing if you want to try to help support what Carolina's football collective is doing. Go get in on this thing, man, because you see what NC State's doing. You've heard all that noise. Their collective is like Savage Wolves, or I can't remember what it's called, but they're doing work out here, and Carolina has to keep up, both football and basketball, with what TJ Beisner's doing with secondary break, man. I love that. I'm excited to continue helping them as well. So Carolina's brought in, several transfers already. We'll be talking about them throughout the offseason. And moving from football, just one big picture thing I want to leave us on, because I thought it was really cool. Recently, the Learfield Directors Cup announced the standings after all the fall sports were completed and all the tallies were in. North Carolina is leading the nation right now in the Learfield Directors Cup. Now, obviously, there's winter and spring sports still to go, but you love it. Carolina is ahead of future ACC member Stanford, and so that's great. Tar Heels just continue to do really, really well in this, and expect them to continue to do so. And the ACC as a whole is doing well too. 7 ACC schools are right now in the top 15, and so this is just another one of those, like, man, I hope the ACC can find a way to stick together. So anyway, great stuff there. Let me quickly give you the Tuesday trivia answer. How many Tar Heels have hit 96 or more three-pointers in a single season? Who are they and what's their number? Well, the answer, the total, is 3 of them. And I'll take you from least to greatest of that. Right at 96 was Cam Johnson in the 18-19 season. At 98 was Brady Manek in the 21-22 season. And then the only Tar Heel ever to eclipse or to hit 100 or more threes in a single season is, you might remember, Justin Jackson hit 105 in the 2016-17 national championship season. So several great seasons with guys doing that. If RJ keeps doing what he is, I would imagine he's going to pass Justin Jackson if Carolina keeps having success and plays deep into the postseason. Great stuff there. All right, folks, it's been great to be together today. Tuesday, tomorrow's show. Wednesday, we'll get ready for Wednesday night's Louisville game with Coach Pat Kilby. Going to be great stuff there. Wednesday night, we will have a live reaction show. Even though it's a late game, I'm going to be here for you with that. Follow the show on Twitter, Locked On Heels, me at Isaac Shade. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show. Rate and review it 5 stars, please, if you would. Smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.